What if I told you that a single phrase, royal robot, has shaken the very foundations of Britain's most carefully crafted image? Imagine a woman who is poised to become queen consort, a woman admired around the world for her grace, her elegance, her polished poise, suddenly being mocked as nothing more than a mechanical figure, a performer whose smile is rehearsed and whose every wave is nothing but an act. That's the sting of Meghan Markle's alleged words about Kate Middleton. All she knows is how to smile and wave. And in that sentence, Meghan didn't just insult a woman. She challenged the monarchy's public performance itself. But here's the question that pulls us deeper. Why now? Why would Meghan risk throwing fuel onto a fire that has already burned through the Windsor family for years? Was it bitterness? Was it a moment of unfiltered honesty? Or was it a calculated strike at the one royal whose image has remained almost untouchable through scandals, divorces, Megxit, and the chaos of a monarchy under pressure? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. You see, Kate isn't just William's wife. She's not just the mother of future kings. She is the monarchy's anchor, the perfect royal, calm, composed, a smiling presence who seems immune to the storm. To insult Kate is to insult the institution itself, and Meghan knew that. Let's rewind for a moment. From the very beginning, Meghan and Kate were framed as opposites. Meghan, the outsider, the actress, the woman of emotion and independence. Kate, the insider, the dutiful daughter-in-law, the one who knew her role and played it flawlessly. The media thrived on this narrative, two women embodying two paths for the monarchy. But while the press painted Meghan as the rebel, Kate was given the title of flawless. And that's exactly what Meghan attacked. She wasn't mocking Kate's appearance. She was mocking her image. An image that, Meghan argued, was fake. And that leads us to the heart of this drama: authenticity. In our modern world, authenticity sells. People crave realness, relatability, raw emotion. Meghan has built her entire brand on authenticity, whether in interviews with Oprah, her Spotify podcast, or her speeches about breaking barriers. So, what happens when she calls Kate a robot? She positions herself as the real woman, the one who dares to speak openly, against the backdrop of a family that prefers silence and smiles. But here's where the tension explodes. To William, this isn't just Meghan throwing shade. This is Meghan throwing a dagger at Kate's very role as the future queen. Imagine being a husband, knowing the world worships your wife for her dignity and composure, only to hear your sister-in-law dismiss her as nothing more than a programmed machine. How do you respond? Do you stay silent and protect the image of calm that the royals cling to? Or do you let your anger show, risking the cracks becoming visible? And make no mistake, William was furious. We'll dive into his reaction soon. But first, consider this irony. Kate's perfection has always been her greatest strength and her greatest weakness. The very thing that keeps the monarchy stable makes her vulnerable to accusations of being inauthentic. Meghan knew that when she struck. Was she jealous? Strategic? Or perhaps both? Let's talk about timing. Meghan's alleged insult didn't emerge in isolation. It came at a time when she and Harry are fighting to remain relevant outside the palace gates. Hollywood deals, interviews, appearances, they're all built on one currency: headlines. And what makes a better headline than mocking the future Queen of England? Meghan's words didn't just sting Kate, they ensured Meghan remained a story. And isn't that what this has always been about? Who controls the narrative? But here's something you might not have considered. Was Meghan speaking her mind, or echoing what others have whispered behind closed doors? Because while Kate is admired, she's also been criticized for being too perfect, for hiding behind a mask of duty. Meghan's insult may have been brutal, but it tapped into a suspicion that some already had. Is Kate really as flawless as she seems? Or is she simply trained to never break character? And that brings us back to the monarchy's biggest challenge: its need to appear untouchable. The Queen mastered this art. She never explained, never complained, and for decades it worked. But now, in the age of social media and raw confessions, that old approach looks robotic. Meghan may have been mocking Kate, but she was also mocking the system itself. Do you see the danger? By calling Kate a robot, Meghan didn't just hit at her sister-in-law. She ripped open a larger debate. Is the monarchy built on authenticity or on performance? And in today's world, which one wins? Pause for a moment and picture this. William and Kate in Clarence's house, scrolling headlines, seeing Meghan's words plastered everywhere. Kate, composed as always, perhaps saying nothing. William, clenching his jaw, knowing silence could look like weakness. Behind those palace walls, the fury must have been palpable. But what comes next? Because if Meghan thought her words were sharp, the reaction would be sharper. William, for once, would be ready to show his fury, not just to defend his wife, but to protect the crown she represents. And the palace? Well, they had their own way of dealing with Meghan. Quiet, calculated, deadly. But before we get to that, let me leave you with this. Meghan may have thrown the first stone, but Kate's silence might be the weapon that cuts deepest of all. And William? His response would prove that behind the polished smiles lies a brother, a husband, a future king, boiling with rage. Because what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It began with a phrase so sharp, so deliberately cutting, that it sliced through centuries of carefully staged royal poise. The royal robot. Think about that for a moment. Meghan Markle, who had once walked into the palace as an eager bride-to-be, allegedly reduced Kate Middleton, the woman destined to be queen consort, to nothing more than a machine. A lifeless puppet. Someone whose only skill, as Meghan allegedly put it, was to smile and wave. On the surface, those words sound flippant, almost like casual sarcasm. But underneath, they carried dynamite. Because in royal life, nothing is casual. Every phrase is a performance. Every slight is a statement. And every word that escapes the mouth of someone tied to the monarchy carries a weight far heavier than it appears. So let's put Meghan's comment into its full, explosive context. Why would she say it? Where did it emerge? And why did it matter so much at this specific moment? From the very beginning, Meghan's story has been framed around her willingness to speak her truth. Whether in the Oprah interview, in her podcast, or in the memoir she supported Harry with, Meghan positioned herself as the one who dared to reveal what others only whispered. To call Kate a royal robot was more than mockery. It was branding. It was Meghan shaping her identity as the authentic outsider against the polished insider. She knew exactly what she was doing. And think about how effective the insult was. It was simple, sharp, and visual. The public instantly understood it. You don't need to explain what a robot means. It conjures up stiffness, emotionless repetition, something soulless. In just 2 words, Meghan painted Kate not as the elegant duchess admired worldwide, but as a hollow performer. It's the kind of insult that sticks. And once it's out there, no amount of palace PR can erase it. But here's the key question. Was Meghan speaking spontaneously, or was this part of a larger strategy? Because timing in royal wars is everything. At the time this comment allegedly surfaced, Meghan and Harry were struggling to maintain relevance. Their Hollywood deals were faltering. Their reputation in Britain was in tatters. The U.S. audience, once sympathetic, was starting to waver. What better way to grab back the spotlight than to reignite the Meghan versus Kate feud? It was a guaranteed headline, a guaranteed debate, a guaranteed clash that would dominate tabloids across 2 continents. And dominate it did. Overnight, the comment was splashed across the press. Meghan calls Kate a robot, screamed headlines. Talk shows dissected it. Social media went into frenzy. Was Meghan telling the truth about Kate's carefully engineered persona, or was she projecting her own bitterness? The phrase, royal robot, became a trending tagline, not just mocking Kate, but raising larger questions about the nature of monarchy itself. Let's not forget, Kate has been criticized before, though always in whispers. Some said she was too perfect, that her public image was airbrushed into flawlessness. But those criticisms never gained traction because Kate never engaged. She smiled, she waved, she carried on with quiet dignity. Meghan, however, gave those whispers a megaphone. By mocking Kate's perfection as robotic, Meghan took an undercurrent of suspicion and dragged it into the spotlight. That was the danger. Now let's peel back the layers of this insult. On one level, it's personal, woman to woman, sister-in-law to sister-in-law. On another, it's cultural. Meghan, the Californian actress, raised in a world where openness and vulnerability are valued, looks at Kate, the British aristocrat in training, and sees repression, stiffness, silence. Meghan's version of authenticity collides directly with Kate's version of duty. And the clash is not just between two women, but between two worldviews. Which matters more, authenticity or tradition? Here's something chilling to consider. Meghan's insult may have been aimed at Kate, but it was also aimed at the late Queen Elizabeth II's entire legacy. The Queen was famous for her stoicism, her refusal to show emotion in public. She was, in many ways, the ultimate royal robot. Meghan's jab at Kate was a jab at that tradition. Was she really mocking Kate, or the monarchy itself? But here's where the story takes an even more dramatic turn. Because this wasn't the first time Meghan had mocked Kate behind the scenes. Reports suggest that even during the early days of her courtship with Harry, Meghan would comment on Kate's step-forward wife, perfection. There were whispers of Meghan rolling her eyes at Kate's public smiles, hinting that the Duchess was nothing more than a well-trained performer. These remarks rarely surfaced in public, but within palace walls, they were remembered. Which is why, when Meghan finally said it aloud, it hit like a bombshell. Imagine William hearing those words. His wife, the mother of his children, the future queen, reduced to a mechanical caricature by his own brother's wife. William has tolerated much, from Harry's accusations to Meghan's interviews. But this was different. This was Kate. And for William, Kate isn't just family. She is his shield, his partner, his future queen. To insult her is to insult him, to insult the crown itself. Now, let's ask ourselves, was Meghan prepared for the reaction? Or did she underestimate just how furious William would be? Because as much as Meghan's words created headlines, they also stirred up fury behind palace doors. William, famously protective of Kate, has reportedly confronted Harry before over Meghan's treatment of her. This time, the insult wasn't just private. It was public, and William's fury, insiders claim, was volcanic. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. Meghan's insult might have hurt Kate, but it also exposed Kate's greatest paradox. Her perfection is her brand, but it is also her Achilles heel. People admire her because she never falters. But that very perfection leaves her open to accusations of being fake, robotic, unfeeling. Meghan knew this, and she pressed on the wound. Let's turn this question on you. Do you believe Kate's calm, polished public image is real? Or is it an act? Do you think she is genuinely stoic, or simply performing a role because the monarchy demands it? That's the power of Meghan's words. They don't just insult, they make people question. And once doubt creeps in, the image is no longer unshakable. And yet, here lies the irony. By calling Kate a robot, Meghan may have accidentally reinforced Kate's strength. Because when the headlines roared, what did Kate do? Nothing. She stayed silent. She smiled. She waved. Just like the robot Meghan accused her of being. And the world admired her even more for it. Meghan's firestorm backfired. But the story doesn't end here. Because Meghan's words didn't just spark headlines. They triggered a chain of events inside the palace that no one could have predicted. William's fury was about to erupt, Harry was once again caught in the middle, and Kate, for once, might not have been willing to stay completely silent. Because what followed Meghan's royal robot comment would transform this feud into something far darker, far more personal, and far more destructive than anyone could have imagined. And that was just the beginning. William's fury did not come like thunder crashing from the sky. It simmered, boiled, and then erupted like a volcano that had been forced to remain dormant for far too long. For years, Prince William has carried the weight of composure. He has been trained since childhood to smile when he is seething, to stand tall when he feels like collapsing, and to represent an institution that allows no cracks to show. But Meghan Markle's mocking of Kate, calling her the royal robot, touched something raw, something deeply personal, something that pierced through the layers of protocol and duty. Let me ask you this. What would you do if someone publicly mocked your partner, the person who has stood beside you through every storm, the person the world reveres, but who you know has sacrificed more than anyone realizes? Would you stay silent? Would you grit your teeth and swallow the insult? Or would you finally let the fury out? For William, this was not a matter of palace politics. This was personal. Kate isn't just his wife. She is the cornerstone of his world. She is the woman who endured years of scrutiny before becoming his bride. She is the mother of his children, the woman who has learned to walk in silence through a minefield of cameras, gossip, and public expectations. To reduce her to a robot, To dismiss all her sacrifices and struggles as nothing more than rehearsed gestures was unforgivable. Behind closed doors, insiders describe William's anger as unlike anything they had seen from him before. We know William has a temper. His friends from university and even palace aides over the years have whispered about the moments when his composure slips, when the calm future king becomes Diana's fiery son. But this was volcanic. He was not only furious at Meghan, but at his brother, Harry, who he felt had allowed, perhaps even encouraged, Meghan's words to spread. Because here's the truth. William has always defended Kate, sometimes subtly, sometimes openly. Remember the early years of their marriage, when tabloids nicknamed her Weighty Katie? William stepped in, insisting people respect her patience and dedication. He shielded her as best he could from the nastiness of the press. And as the years passed, he became her fiercest protector. So when Meghan mocked Kate, it wasn't just an insult to his sister-in-law. It was a betrayal of a sacred boundary. Picture the scene inside Clarence's house. William, pacing the room, fists clenched, jaw locked. Kate, as ever, calm and composed, urging restraint. And yet, William cannot let it go. Reports suggest that he made it crystal clear to Harry. This was unacceptable. He allegedly confronted him, voice raised, demanding that Meghan's words be retracted or at least clarified. To William, silence was no longer an option. But here lies the cruel twist. For the royals, anger must remain hidden. Fury can never be shown publicly. William knew that exploding in front of cameras would only give Meghan the ammunition she wanted. Proof that she could get under his skin, proof that the stoic facade could crack. So he swallowed it in public. He smiled at events, stood tall during ceremonies, kept his voice calm when reporters hovered. But behind the palace doors, insiders say his fury was palpable. Staff noticed. Aides whispered. The protective husband in him had been unleashed. And yet, this fury wasn't just about Meghan mocking Kate's image. It was about the deeper pain William has carried for years, watching his family splinter apart. He had tried, at different points, to bring Harry back from the brink. He had sat down with his brother, tried to reason with him, tried to remind him of their bond. But every time, Meghan seemed to come between them, driving a wedge deeper and deeper. This latest insult wasn't just words. It was another reminder that his brother had chosen sides. Do you see the tragedy? William's fury wasn't only about defending Kate. It was about grieving what he had lost with Harry. He felt betrayed, cornered, and powerless. And when a man who has been trained his entire life to stay calm feels powerless, that's when rage becomes dangerous. Now, let's pause and consider Kate's role in this. Because while William seethed, Kate remained composed. That's who she is. She knows that every public reaction is a headline. She knows that every flicker of emotion can be twisted by the media. So she told William to let it go. But insiders say that in private, she wasn't as unaffected as she appeared. Meghan's words stung. Not because Kate doubted herself, but because she knew that the insult would linger. People would whisper it. People would repeat it. The royal robot would be tied to her name, no matter how unfairly. And that is why William's fury only deepened. He saw Kate suffering silently, and that broke him. Meghan had not just mocked her. She had planted a seed of cruelty that could grow unchecked in the public imagination. So what did William do with this fury? Some claim he began considering drastic measures, that he pushed palace aides to explore ways of drawing clear lines between his family and Harry's, that he contemplated cutting ties once and for all. After all, if Meghan was going to continue throwing bombs, how long could William risk his wife and children being caught in the blast? Think about it. William has always carried himself as the future king, balancing composure with quiet strength. But for once, insiders say, he didn't want to act like a king. He wanted to act like a husband, a man who had to protect the woman he loved. And in that moment, the royal gave way to the human. But this is where the story twists again. Because William's fury, though powerful, wasn't the only response. Behind the scenes, the palace machinery began to stir. Advisors, courtiers, communication strategists, they saw the danger. They knew Meghan's words had to be countered, not with anger, but with silence and symbolism. The palace was about to play its deadliest card, quiet, strategic retaliation. And this, dear listener, is where things start to take a darker turn. Because while William fumed, Kate smiled, and Meghan basked in the chaos. The palace was plotting. Their silence was not weakness. It was war. What the palace did next would shock even those closest to the family. And it was a move that Meghan never saw coming. Because what came next would not just be about words. It would be about power. Kate Middleton, the woman the world has nicknamed a living fairy tale, the flawless duchess who transitioned from commoner to future queen with such elegance, it almost feels scripted. She is seen as polished, poised, untouchable. But Meghan's words, royal robot, struck at the very foundation of that image. To understand why Meghan's insult landed like a grenade, we must dig deep into Kate's so-called perfect image, how it was constructed, why it matters to the monarchy, and why it enrages Meghan and others who see it as an illusion. Let's start with a shocking thought. Perfection isn't natural, it's engineered. Every smile you've seen from Kate, every wave, every carefully chosen outfit, every subtle gesture, none of it happens by accident. It is deliberate, it is strategy, and it is survival. Kate's life has been a public performance since she began dating William in the early 2000s. She learned quickly that one wrong move could define her forever. Too flashy? She'd be mocked as a fame-hungry wannabe. Too quiet? She'd be labeled dull, boring, irrelevant. The balance she struck was meticulous, and over time, she built a reputation as the perfect royal. But here's the contradiction. Perfection creates admiration and envy in equal measure. For millions, Kate is aspirational, the woman who can do no wrong. But for Meghan, Kate's perfection was suffocating, even threatening. Meghan came into the royal family as an actress who prided herself on authenticity, emotion, and relatability. Against Kate's unshakable facade, Meghan always risked looking messy, unstable, too raw. And so Meghan flipped the narrative. If Kate's strength was her perfection, Meghan turned it into her weakness. A royal robot, a performer, a mask. But let's be clear, Kate's image is not an accident of birth or luck. It was painstakingly built. When Diana died, William and Harry's futures shifted. William, as heir, needed stability. The monarchy, battered by scandals, divorces, and public disillusionment, needed a savior figure. Kate fit the role perfectly. She was steady, loyal, elegant, and crucially, she never complained. She learned from Diana's tragedy. No public outbursts. No risky interviews. No cracks. She would be everything Diana wasn't allowed to be. Safe, controlled, obedient to the royal script. And it worked. The public adored her. Designers scrambled to dress her. Tabloids praised her fashion. Her photographs sold papers. Her children became national treasures. Kate became the monarchy's golden ticket to stability. But here's the problem. Perfection is brittle. The more flawless someone appears, the more others look for flaws. Think about it. How many times have you seen someone who seems too perfect and wondered, what's the catch? Meghan's insult tapped into that suspicion. By calling Kate a robot, she planted the idea that maybe this perfection wasn't human at all. Maybe it was cold, mechanical, unfeeling. And once that thought is out there, people can't unsee it. Now let's explore how Kate's image is maintained. It isn't just her natural grace, it's an entire operation. Public relations teams, advisors, stylists, speech coaches, image consultants. Every public appearance is choreographed. The color of her dresses often has symbolic meaning. Her jewelry choices often pay homage to royal history. Even the way she interacts with her children in public is carefully balanced, warm, but not too casual, firm, but not cold. And her smile, that famous, flawless smile, is her greatest weapon. It disarms criticism. It reassures the public. It creates the illusion of effortless perfection. But imagine the pressure. Imagine waking up every day knowing that millions will dissect your every move, your every word, your every expression. Imagine knowing that one misstep, one wrong look, one careless phrase could dominate headlines for weeks. How long could you maintain that mask? Kate has managed it for over 2 decades. But at what cost? And this is where Meghan's words cut deepest. Because for Kate, silence has been her shield. She rarely speaks publicly about her feelings. She never engages in interviews that might reveal vulnerability. And while that makes her strong in the eyes of the monarchy, Meghan sees it as hollow. Meghan sees it as inhuman. To Meghan, silence isn't strength, it's suppression. And so she mocks it. The royal robot. But here's where the irony kicks in. Kate's so-called robotic perfection has been the monarchy's greatest strength. In times of scandal, she is the steady hand. When Harry and Meghan caused chaos with interviews and revelations, Kate remained unshaken. When Charles faced criticism, when Andrew disgraced the family, when public trust faltered, Kate stood tall, smiling, waving, reminding the world that stability still existed. In many ways, she is the glue holding the monarchy together. Yet Meghan's insult forces us to ask, is that glue real, or is it synthetic? Is Kate truly the serene, confident figure we see, or is she simply the most convincing actress of all? Let me ask you directly. When you see Kate on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, waving with that calm smile, do you see a woman at peace, or a woman hiding her exhaustion behind protocol? Do you believe she is genuinely content in her role, or do you think she has learned to perform happiness as if it were a royal duty? That's the uncomfortable truth Meghan's insult revealed. Because even those who adore Kate can't help but wonder, what does she really feel? And yet, despite Meghan's sharp words, Kate's image didn't crumble. In fact, it may have become even stronger. Why? Because she did nothing. No rebuttal. No angry interviews. No response. She let Meghan talk, while she continued to do what she has always done, smile and wave. And in that silence, the world saw strength, not weakness. Meghan's words may have hurt, but they also reinforced Kate's ability to rise above the noise. But William didn't see it that way. To him, Meghan's insult wasn't just cruel, it was dangerous. Because it wasn't just about his wife's dignity. It was about the monarchy's survival. If Meghan could plant doubt in the public's mind about Kate's authenticity, then the monarchy's golden image could begin to crack. And that, William knew, could not be allowed. And so, while Kate remained composed, William's anger grew hotter. Because in his eyes, Meghan had gone too far. She hadn't just insulted his wife. She had attacked the monarchy's greatest asset. But the question lingered like smoke. Was Meghan wrong? Or was she daring to say aloud what many had quietly wondered? And here lies the cliffhanger. Meghan's comment about Kate being a robot wasn't just an insult. It was a challenge, a provocation, a dare. Would Kate continue to hide behind perfection? Or would she, at last, show the world that behind the flawless facade, there is a real woman with real emotions? Because what happened next would reveal cracks in Kate's perfect image that no one saw coming. Authenticity. That single word is the crown jewel of Meghan Markle's brand, the weapon she wields against an institution built on silence and duty. From the very moment she stepped into the royal spotlight, Meghan positioned herself as something different, something raw, something real. And when she mocked Kate Middleton as the royal robot, she wasn't just making fun of her sister-in-law's poise. She was setting the stage for her own contrast, Meghan as the authentic one, the woman of emotions and vulnerability, versus Kate as the mechanical, polished figure who performs but never reveals. But let's step back. Why does Meghan push this idea of authenticity so hard? Because in the modern age, authenticity is everything. Think about it. On social media, in politics, in celebrity culture, the people who thrive are the ones who come across as genuine. Audiences crave relatability. They want to feel connected, as if they're being shown the real person behind the image. Meghan understands this. As an actress, as a speaker, as someone who knows the power of storytelling, she has built her public identity around being open, honest, and unafraid to show her emotions. Tears on Oprah's couch, stories of mental health struggles, moments of anger, laughter, vulnerability. Meghan frames all of this as her truth. And Kate represents the opposite. She embodies tradition, duty, stoicism, silence. Meghan looks at that image and calls it artificial. She calls it robotic. She calls it fake. And in doing so, Meghan positions herself as the antidote, the warm, relatable woman who dares to say what others won't. But here's the twist. Authenticity can be as carefully crafted as perfection. Meghan's authentic brand is no accident. It is curated. It is deliberate. Every story she shares, every emotional beat she reveals, every dramatic pause in an interview, it is all part of a strategy. The tears, the vulnerability, the open wounds. These moments captivate audiences. They generate headlines. They create sympathy. And most importantly, they keep Meghan relevant. Think of the Oprah interview. Meghan and Harry didn't just sit down for a chat. It was a carefully staged performance of authenticity. Meghan's expressions, her voice trembling at times, the way she framed herself as a victim of coldness and cruelty, all of it was designed to make the audience to feel anger toward the monarchy, to feel sympathy for her, to feel that she was finally speaking the truth no one else dared to tell. That is the power of her strategy. And that is why mocking Kate as a royal robot fits perfectly into Meghan's narrative. By portraying Kate as mechanical, Meghan makes herself appear human. By dismissing Kate's perfection as artificial, Meghan amplifies her own flaws as authenticity. It is a contrast designed to divide audiences into two camps, those who admire Kate's stoicism and those who crave Meghan's relatability. But let's ask an uncomfortable question. Is Meghan's authenticity authentic? Or is it simply another mask, different from Kate's, but still a mask? Because if you look closely, Meghan's brand of openness has its own contradictions. She insists she is transparent, yet she is also fiercely controlling of her narrative. She shares vulnerability, but always in carefully chosen settings with sympathetic interviewers. She claims to reject the coldness of royal tradition, yet she embraces Hollywood's carefully orchestrated publicity machine. Is that authenticity or performance? Let's put it to you. When you see Meghan cry on television, do you believe it's unfiltered emotion, or do you think it's calculated, a tool to sway public opinion? When you hear her speak about Kate or the monarchy, do you feel she is exposing a hidden truth, or simply striking back to stay in the spotlight? That's the tightrope Meghan walks. And that's why her strategy is both brilliant and dangerous. Now consider this. Meghan's focus on authenticity resonates strongly with American audiences, but less so in Britain. In the US, where celebrity culture rewards openness, Meghan's rawness is appealing. In Britain, however, tradition values restraint, dignity, and understatement. Kate's silence is admired, Meghan's openness is criticized. Two cultures, two worldviews, colliding in one family. Meghan's attack on Kate wasn't just personal, it was cultural. It was Meghan saying, "Your way is outdated. My way is the future." And perhaps Meghan believes that. Perhaps she truly thinks that authenticity will outlast perfection. But what if she's wrong? Because while audiences may crave realness, they also crave stability. Kate's perfection may seem robotic, but it provides comfort. In a world of chaos, Kate's unchanging image reassures people. Meghan's emotional openness, on the other hand, can sometimes feel like chaos itself. Too much drama, too much vulnerability, too much exposure, and audiences can turn away. That's the gamble Meghan takes. By calling Kate a robot, she reinforces her own brand as authentic. But in doing so, she risks looking petty, bitter, jealous. Instead of appearing raw and human, she risks appearing cruel. And cruelty, no matter how authentic, can destroy sympathy. But here's the most fascinating part. Meghan knows this risk. And yet, she plays the game anyway. Because she understands one crucial truth about modern media. Controversy is currency. Insults, feuds, emotional outbursts, they keep her name in headlines. And as long as people are talking about her, she wins. Meghan doesn't need everyone to love her. She only needs people to keep watching. Think about that. Meghan mocking Kate wasn't just a dig. It was a strategy. It was a move on the chessboard of public opinion. And while William fumed, Kate stayed silent. Meghan laughed her way back into the spotlight. But what Meghan may not have anticipated was the palace's countermove. Because while Meghan plays the game of authenticity, the monarchy plays the game of endurance. Kate doesn't need to clap back, because time itself strengthens her brand. Meghan may burn hot, but Kate burns steady. And in the long run, steadiness often wins. Still, Meghan's words had already lit a fire. They forced the world to look at Kate differently. They forced William into fury. And they forced the palace into action. Because if Meghan's authenticity was her weapon, the palace had its own arsenal, centuries of power, silence, and strategy. And what came next would prove that while Meghan could stir the storm, the palace could control the lightning. Because this feud wasn't just about authenticity versus perfection. It was about survival. And the next chapter of this battle would show just how far each side was willing to go. The moment Meghan's royal robot insult hit the press, It was like tossing a lit match into a dry forest. Within hours, the story wasn't just whispered gossip. It was a blazing media frenzy, splashed across headlines from London to Los Angeles. And that's where the real war began, not inside Clarence House, not in Montecito, but in the global media arena, where public image is currency and perception is everything. Meghan calls Kate a robot. That headline alone was enough to sell millions of papers, fuel endless online debates, and flood social media feeds. It was short, sharp, easy to understand, easy to share, the kind of phrase that lingers in people's minds long after they've closed the article. It didn't matter if Meghan said it as a joke, an offhand remark, or as a calculated jab. The press framed it as an open insult, and from there, it took on a life of its own. Why did it blow up so quickly? Because the media thrives on two things: simplicity and conflict. The feud between Kate and Meghan has always been catnip to tabloids. Two glamorous women, two competing archetypes, two visions of royalty. It's Diana versus Camilla all over again, but modernized for the digital age. Meghan's insult gave journalists the hook they'd been waiting for, a fresh angle in a feud that never seems to die. And let's be honest, the press didn't just report the insult, they amplified it. They twisted it. They dissected it from every angle. British tabloids called Meghan jealous, petty, and cruel. U.S. outlets, on the other hand, leaned into the authenticity debate, suggesting Meghan was simply calling out the fakery of royal life. Talk show hosts laughed, commentators analyzed, social media exploded with memes. The royal robot became a trending hashtag, with images of Kate photoshopped as an automaton, waving mechanically on palace balconies. Can you see how powerful this was? A single phrase had reduced years of royal branding into a joke. Kate, the poised duchess, was suddenly seen through the lens of a meme. And Meghan, love her or hate her, was once again the center of attention. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. The frenzy revealed more about the public than it did about Meghan or Kate. Because the reaction split into two camps, just as Meghan may have intended. On one side, people rushed to defend Kate. They saw Meghan's words as cruel and unnecessary. How dare she mock Kate, who has done nothing but serve with dignity, they asked. On the other side, people applauded Meghan for saying what they'd always suspected, that Kate's perfection was too good to be true, that she was more mannequin than human. And the media loved both reactions. Because in the world of headlines, division means clicks. Outrage sells. Defense sells. The more polarized the reaction, the more people tune in. Meghan may have thrown the insult, but the press turned it into a cultural debate. Was Kate the perfect royal, or a carefully programmed figurehead? Was Meghan exposing the truth, or simply tearing another woman down? Now imagine the palace staff watching this unfold. For them, this was a nightmare scenario. They have spent years building Kate's image as the perfect future queen. They've invested countless resources into ensuring she is adored, admired, and respected. And suddenly, one phrase, royal robot, threatened to undo all that work. Not because people believed Meghan outright, but because the doubt had been planted. And in public relations, doubt is poison. Meanwhile, in Montecito, Meghan must have known exactly what she was doing. Every headline mentioning Kate also mentioned her. Every debate about whether Kate was robotic kept Meghan's name alive in the cultural conversation. Remember, controversy is currency. For Meghan, being talked about, even negatively, is better than being ignored. The frenzy wasn't just collateral damage. It was the point. But here's the catch. Meghan underestimated how quickly the tide could turn. At first, the media frenzy seemed to favor her, sparking debate and giving her attention. But within days, the narrative began to shift. British tabloids doubled down on portraying her as bitter. American commentators started questioning her motives. Even some of her own supporters admitted the insult felt like punching down. Instead of looking authentic, Meghan risked looking petty. And that's where Kate's silence became her greatest weapon. While Meghan's words dominated headlines, Kate appeared in public, smiling as always, waving as always. She said nothing. She gave no interviews. She simply carried on, embodying the very stoicism Meghan mocked. And the public noticed. Commentators began praising Kate's dignity, contrasting her silence with Meghan's sharp tongue. The more Kate stayed quiet, the more Meghan's insult backfired. This is where the monarchy's ancient strategy kicked in: never explain, never complain. Let the storm burn itself out. Let the tabloids scream. Let the hashtags trend. Let the frenzy rage. Because in the end, silence outlasts scandal. Meghan's voice was loud, but Kate's silence was enduring. Yet behind that silence, William was anything but calm. For him, the media frenzy was salt in the wound. It wasn't just Meghan insulting his wife. It was the world repeating it, amplifying it, turning it into entertainment. Imagine being a husband, watching your wife's dignity reduced to memes, her perfection mocked as programming. William's fury, already volcanic, threatened to erupt. And here's where the story darkens. Because William wasn't just angry at Meghan. He was furious with Harry. Furious that his own brother had allowed this to happen. Furious that Harry hadn't stepped in to defend Kate. Furious that instead of shielding her, Harry had let Meghan drag Kate into the mud of the media circus once again. This frenzy didn't just pit Meghan against Kate. It drove the brothers further apart. But before we get to William's next move, let me leave you with this chilling reality. The media frenzy wasn't accidental. It was inevitable. Because in the royal soap opera, nothing sells like women at war. And Meghan's royal robot insult gave the press the perfect script. One that would run for weeks, months, maybe even years. The question is, who would win in the long run? Meghan, with her weapon of authenticity and controversy? Or Kate, with her weapon of silence and perfection? The media firestorm was only the beginning. What came next would show just how far the palace was willing to go to protect its future queen, and just how much damage Meghan's words had truly caused. Because this battle wasn't just about headlines. It was about power, and the palace was about to fight back in ways Meghan never expected. Inside the gilded halls of Clarence House and Kensington Palace, whispers carried like wildfire. Meghan's royal robot comment wasn't just a line the tabloids were chewing over. It was a direct assault on the crown's most carefully guarded image. And while the public saw Kate smiling serenely at engagements, while William clenched his jaw in silent fury, palace insiders were scrambling. Because when you insult Kate Middleton, you don't just offend a woman. You provoke the machinery of monarchy itself. Imagine the scene. Aides gathered in quiet rooms, private secretaries leaning in over polished wooden tables, hushed voices bouncing off walls lined with royal portraits. They were asking one question: how do we respond? Do we ignore Meghan's jab and let it die out? Or do we act, subtly but decisively, to protect Kate's reputation and the monarchy's credibility? Here's the thing about the palace. It never acts impulsively. Rage is private, but strategy is everything. And while William was seething, the courtiers around him were already thinking in long-term moves, like chess masters plotting 5 steps ahead. Their conclusion? Meghan's insult could not go unanswered. But the response would not be words. It would be whispers, carefully planted stories, subtle displays of power. This is the part the public rarely sees. The royals may appear silent, but behind the scenes, their courtiers feed the press. Quiet briefings to friendly journalists. Off-the-record chats over lunch. Carefully crafted narratives slipped to the tabloids at just the right moment. They don't need to scream. The whispers do the work. And so, within days of Meghan's royal robot remark, palace sources began to murmur. Articles emerged praising Kate's resilience, her dignity, her quiet strength in the face of cruelty. Words like grace under fire and the true future queen began appearing across newspapers. It was no accident. The palace had unleashed its counteroffensive, not by attacking Meghan directly, but by elevating Kate above the fray. But whispers inside the palace walls went further. Some aides were reportedly livid. To them, Meghan had crossed an unspoken line. It was one thing to criticize the institution, quite another to mock the woman who symbolized its stability. They worried about the impact on Kate herself. They knew how much she sacrificed, how much pressure she endured to remain perfect in public. To see her reduced to a joke cut deep, not just for William, but for staff who had served her loyally for years. Princess and William's aunt was said to be among those who offered quiet support. Known for her bluntness and loyalty to tradition, and allegedly saw Meghan's words as yet another example of disrespect toward the monarchy, and has never been one to mince words. And while she may not have gone public, Insiders whispered that she urged William and Kate to stand firm and not let Meghan's insult rattle them. And then there were whispers about Charles. The king, already navigating health challenges and political pressures, found himself dragged once more into his son's feud. Sources suggest he was frustrated, not just at Meghan, but at the endless drama that seemed to swirl around Harry. For Charles, Kate is more than just his daughter-in-law. She is central to the monarchy's survival. To see her mocked unsettled him, but his approach, much like his mother's before him, was to keep calm and let time erode Meghan's sting. Never explain, never complain, remained the guiding principle. But behind the calm exterior, the palace machine was at work. Did you notice the timing of Kate's next public appearance? Perfectly orchestrated. Just days after the scandal broke, Kate stepped out in a striking ensemble, her smile radiant, her composure flawless. She said nothing, but her presence said everything. It was as if the palace was saying, "Robot, look again. Here is your future queen, elegant, human, unbroken." The silence wasn't passive. It was tactical. Let's ask ourselves, what effect do whispers have in a palace built on secrecy? They are everything. Staff gossip becomes narrative. Narrative becomes story. Story becomes history. Meghan may have mocked Kate aloud, but in those quiet hallways, aides were hardening their loyalty, circling wagons around William and Kate. For Meghan, the insult was a jab. For the palace, it was a declaration of war. And yet, here's the irony. These whispers weren't only about defending Kate. They also carried sharp edges for Harry. Aides grumbled that he had allowed Meghan to drag Kate into the mud. Some even questioned whether Harry regretted not stepping in to rein Meghan back. William's fury at Meghan was matched by his growing bitterness toward his brother. Every whisper about Kate's dignity came with an unspoken undertone. Harry had betrayed it. Do you see how dangerous this is? The palace doesn't just react. It rewrites. Meghan's words became less about her insult and more about reinforcing a new narrative. Kate as the suffering, dignified figure rising above cruelty. Meghan as the bitter outsider. That's the subtle genius of palace whispers. They don't fight the insult head-on. They reshape the battlefield so that the insult backfires. And while the palace whispered, the tension inside Clarence House mounted. Staff braced for William's temper, for his determination to act. Aides who once hoped for reconciliation between the brothers began to murmur that this might be the final straw. "There's no going back now," one insider allegedly sighed. Meghan's jab wasn't just a headline. It was a fracture line in the family, a wound that no bandage of diplomacy could cover. But here's the question we have to ask. How much of this whisper war was calculated, and how much of it was genuine outrage? Were courtiers defending Kate because they believed in her, or because they knew she was the monarchy's last shield of stability? In truth, it was both. Kate is the jewel of the institution. Her image cannot be tarnished without tarnishing the crown itself. Meghan may have thought she was mocking a person, but she was really mocking a symbol, and the palace never forgives insults to its symbols. And yet, behind those polished walls, another whisper began to circulate. A darker one. A suggestion that perhaps Kate herself was growing tired of always being the perfect one, the robotic one. Meghan's insult stung not only because it was cruel, but because it echoed a fear Kate may have harbored privately, that her humanity was being erased by her duty. And that whisper, if true, could change everything. Because what happens when the woman the monarchy depends on begins to doubt the very role that defines her? The palace was whispering. William was fuming. Meghan was basking in headlines. And Kate? Kate was silent. But silence doesn't always mean strength. Sometimes it hides something far more complicated. And what came next would reveal that beneath Kate's perfect image lay cracks no one dared acknowledge, until Meghan's insult forced them into the light. It was never just one insult. It was never just one phrase. The truth is, Meghan Markle and Kate Middleton's rivalry stretches back years, long before the royal robot remark hit the tabloids like a thunderclap. What we're seeing now is the eruption of a feud that has simmered beneath the polished surface of the monarchy since Meghan first stepped into royal life. Ask yourself this. Can two women, one an outsider who prides herself on authenticity, the other an insider who embodies perfection, ever peacefully coexist in an institution built on comparison? The answer is written in the long, complicated history of Meghan versus Kate. Let's rewind to the very beginning. Meghan's entrance into the royal family was framed as the breath of fresh air. The modern princess, the mixed-race, American actress who would bring diversity, glamour, and a new voice to the monarchy. But from the very first moment, the comparisons began. How would Meghan measure up to Kate? Would she rival her in style, in poise, in public approval? For Meghan, it was a losing game before it even started, because Kate had already spent years perfecting her image. She had endured the tabloids calling her Weighty Katie during her courtship with William. She had emerged polished, admired, untouchable. By the time Meghan arrived, Kate was already the standard. And this is where the seeds of rivalry were planted. Meghan, who had built her career on being outspoken and emotional, suddenly found herself measured against a woman who never cracked. Meghan smiled too wide. Kate was elegant. Meghan spoke too boldly. Kate was dignified. Meghan wore something daring. Kate was tasteful. No matter what Meghan did, the press framed Kate as the gold standard. But the rivalry truly exploded around one infamous event, the bridesmaid dress drama. You remember the story. Leading up to Meghan and Harry's wedding, a tabloid storm erupted over reports that Meghan made Kate cry during a disagreement over Princess Charlotte's bridesmaid dress. For years, the public believed that narrative. Meghan had reduced Kate to tears. It painted Meghan as the villain, Kate as the victim. But during her Oprah interview, Meghan flipped the script. She claimed it was the other way around, that Kate had made her cry, and that the palace had allowed the false story to stand because they wouldn't correct it for her. This moment marked a turning point. It wasn't just gossip, it was war. Meghan was no longer simply being compared to Kate. She was accusing Kate of being part of the institution's cruelty. And Kate, true to her strategy, stayed silent. Meghan's words became her truth. Kate's silence became her shield, and the public was left to choose sides. But behind closed doors, the rivalry was even sharper. Insiders whispered of tension between the women, subtle digs at one another, cold shoulders at palace events. Meghan allegedly felt Kate was unwelcoming from the start. Kate, on the other hand, reportedly saw Meghan as too brash, too unwilling to adapt to royal traditions. Their differences were not just personal, they were cultural. Meghan brought Hollywood openness. Kate embodied British restraint. Meghan wanted to be authentic. Kate wanted to be perfect. These two archetypes were destined to clash. And clash they did. At joint engagements, body language experts pored over every glance, every smile, every posture. Was Kate too stiff? Was Meghan too performative? The media magnified every micro-expression into evidence of a feud. And let's be honest, sometimes the tension was visible. Meghan's warmth seemed almost exaggerated next to Kate's polished calm. The contrast was glaring, and it fueled the narrative. Here were two women locked in a silent competition for public love and media dominance. Then came Megxit. When Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties, the rivalry deepened into something darker. Meghan portrayed herself and Harry as victims of a cold, robotic system. And who was the face of that system? Kate. She represented everything Meghan claimed to be rebelling against. To Meghan's supporters, Kate became the step-forward wife of the monarchy, the woman who upheld the facade. To Kate's supporters, Meghan became the rebel who abandoned duty and smeared the family. Their feud became symbolic of something bigger, tradition versus rebellion. And this is where the royal robot insult lands with such force. It wasn't just a dig at Kate's personality. It was the culmination of years of rivalry. Meghan knew that Kate's perfection was her greatest strength, and so she struck there, turning it into weakness. By mocking her as robotic, Meghan reframed Kate's image as inhuman, hollow, soulless. It was brutal, yes, but it was also strategic. But let's pause here. Because while Meghan may have seen Kate as her rival, Kate didn't always play the game. In fact, Kate's silence often made her appear above it all. And perhaps that was the most infuriating part for Meghan. How do you fight someone who never fights back? How do you win against someone whose silence only makes them look stronger? Meghan's words could cut, but Kate's restraint disarmed them. And yet, here's the paradox. Silence can also be interpreted as weakness. Meghan's outspokenness often forced Kate into the role of the passive figure, the one who never responds, the one who endures but never defends herself. Some see that as dignity. Others see it as robotic. And in that gap, The space between admiration and doubt, the rivalry festers. Let's ask the audience. Do you believe Kate and Meghan could have ever been friends? Could they have ever supported each other instead of competing? Or was the rivalry inevitable, written into their roles the moment Meghan joined the family? Because here's the chilling truth. The monarchy thrives on comparison. Diana versus Fergie. Camilla versus Diana. Kate versus Meghan. The press needs rivalry to keep the story alive. And whether they liked it or not, Meghan and Kate became the latest chapter in that endless cycle. But Meghan's robot jab shifted the feud into new territory. It wasn't just about who wore the better dress or who smiled more warmly at the crowd. It was about humanity versus performance. Meghan was calling Kate inauthentic, mechanical, soulless. And for William, for the palace, for the monarchy, those words weren't just personal. They were existential. Because if the world began to believe Kate was nothing more than a royal robot, then the monarchy itself risked being seen as a hollow machine. And that is a battle the palace could not afford to lose. But before we dive into how William responded to this escalation, let me leave you with this. Meghan and Kate's rivalry was never just between two women. It was the rivalry between two futures. Meghan's vision of authenticity, Kate's vision of perfection. Only one can define the monarchy, and what came next would push that rivalry to its breaking point. Because William, for once, was prepared to draw the line in the sand. Harry, the brother torn between blood and love. The man who once called William his best mate, who once promised his mother he would always stand by his sibling, now caught in a storm of his own making. When Meghan's royal robot insult about Kate exploded across headlines, the world turned its eyes not only to Meghan, not only to Kate, not even just to William. They turned to Harry. Because his role in this drama is more complicated than anyone else's. He is the bridge between the two women. He is the brother who could have stopped it or fueled it. Ask yourself, what would you do if your spouse mocked your brother's wife in public? Would you defend your partner, no matter the fallout? Or would you step in and say, enough? That's too far. This was Harry's dilemma. A dilemma that cut straight to the heart of his identity. Was he first Meghan's husband or first William's brother? From the outside, it's easy to assume Harry stood silently by Meghan, as he so often does. But insiders whisper that William's fury was directed just as much at Harry as at Meghan. William expected his brother to defend Kate, to draw a line, to say, no, you can't talk about my sister-in-law that way. And when Harry didn't, when he let the insult stand, William felt more betrayed than ever. But let's rewind. Harry's relationship with Kate wasn't just surface-level politeness. For years, before Meghan came into the picture, Kate was like a sister to him. Remember those photos of the three of them, William, Kate, and Harry, laughing together at public engagements? They were called the Royal Trio. Kate often acted as a calming influence, softening the brothers' disagreements, even joking with Harry when tensions ran high. In many ways, she was the sister he never had. And for Kate, Harry was like the mischievous younger brother she could tease and confide in. That bond was real, which makes Meghan's insult sting even more. Because if Harry truly loved Kate as a sister, how could he allow Meghan to reduce her to a joke? That's what William wanted to know. That's why William's fury at Meghan spilled into fury at Harry. He wasn't just defending his wife. He was holding his brother accountable. But let's consider Harry's side. For him, Meghan had become his everything. His wife, the mother of his children, his partner in escape. He had promised to protect her from the same fate that took their mother, Diana. To Harry, Meghan's pain mattered above all else. And Meghan's narrative, that Kate was cold, robotic, unwelcoming, fit into Harry's growing resentment toward the institution that, in his mind, had failed him and his mother. To stand up for Kate would have felt, to Harry, like betraying Meghan. And Harry was not going to betray Meghan. Not after all they had endured together. This is the tragedy. Harry was trapped in a choice where either decision would hurt him. Defend Kate, and he risks Meghan's fury, the unraveling of his fragile marriage. Defend Meghan, and he risks severing his bond with William forever. In the end, he chose Meghan. Again and again, he chooses Meghan. And William saw that as betrayal. But here's the question we must ask. Did Harry truly believe Meghan's insult? Did he think Kate was robotic, cold, mechanical? Or did he stay silent simply to protect his wife's narrative? Because Harry knew Kate better than that. He had seen her behind closed doors, laughing, caring for her children, supporting William. He knew she wasn't a robot. Yet he let Meghan's words hang in the air, unchallenged. That silence spoke volumes. To William, it said Harry had chosen his side, and it wasn't the family he was born into. And yet, the situation is more complicated than just Harry betrayed Kate. Because Harry also resents Kate. Resents the fact that she and William represent the future he abandoned. Resents that she plays her role perfectly while Meghan was torn apart for trying. Resents that Kate's silence wins her praise while Meghan's honesty earns her criticism. To Harry, the comparison between Kate and Meghan is constant, cruel, and unfair. And perhaps Meghan's insult gave voice to the bitterness Harry himself felt but never dared to say aloud. But bitterness alone doesn't erase history. Harry's bond with Kate was once genuine. He was there when she first joined the family. He leaned on her when William argued with him. She cared for him when he struggled in the aftermath of Diana's death. And now, that bond lies shattered. Can you imagine the heartbreak on both sides? Kate, seeing the man she once thought of as a little brother stay silent as his wife mocked her. William, watching the triangle of trust dissolve before his eyes. And Harry, torn between past loyalty and present devotion, choosing the latter no matter the cost. Do you see the Shakespearean tragedy here? Harry is both victim and perpetrator. He has lost his mother, lost his country, lost his brother, and yet in defending Meghan, he feels he has finally won love.